Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. In today's video, well, no further words need to be said. We're going to be covering the weapon refines of 2021 in March. So this one is more interesting than most batches, and I'm going to credit that mostly to the seasonal refine, but we'll cover everything else as standard like usual. Enjoy the video, folks. Alright guys, so here we are. March 2021, seasonal refines, not just seasonal, but regular refines too. Lots to talk about because there's 5 units covered here. Standard GHB stuff, but the real interesting thing is definitely Halloween Nowi and what that implies for the future. So I covered it in my update notification video a couple days back that we'll probably get stuff like Halloween, not Halloween Hector, LA Hector, Valentine's Hector coming up, because it even says that in the update notif that he's going to come in April as another banner. So there's kind of like a little foreshadowing of that. But these units are worth talking about too, and how they've been improved quite drastically, most of them. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to look at the weapon itself, the weapon refine first, and then I'll give you sample builds. Now remember, with sample builds, a lot of stuff is flexible. Use what you got in your barracks to fodder in, and you can definitely use characters in a lot of different ways. The idea of a sample build is to get you thinking, and you got to make do with what you have, right? Alright, so with that being said, Ayra's Blade, first one up. Okay, this one's really interesting. They kind of did away with the whole flashing blade aspect of it. They changed it to slaying, which is a very good change, combined with Regnal Astra. They added an additional attack 3, just flat stats, among the speed 3 that it originally had. That's different. So you have slaying and stats on it, just flat stats. And it also has that neutralize of cooldown, acceleration, and reduction effect, which is kind of similar to Crater Sword in that aspect. Very good effect, by the way, when we'll touch into that in a moment. And finally, as long as the enemy is over 75% health, which depends, you get 4 to all stats and a damage reduction effect. That damage reduction effect I feel is really good. Really, really good. Most damage reduction skills are really good, but usually they're tied up to different components that make it harder to use, like conditions like speed checks, or using a whole B slot. But in like when we're talking about Ayra here, this is actually really good because it's like it's mostly unconditional. I mean, I'd say that your foe being over 75% health will mean that she'll usually attack before other units if she has the most favorable matchup. Anyways, so I'm going to cover Ayra as a defense unit first, because I feel like defense is somewhere that maybe people won't use her, but she actually is going to be really good there. And the reason for that is that whole special cooldown denial thing is a really good effect, like really good effect. The reason that's so good is because a lot of carries rely on something like Lancina or Brett's, or just straight up special fighter, and her being able to say no to that is huge. Now combine that with null follow-up, because you have a lot of characters who run auto, like double effects, auto follow-up effects, and you have yourself a really good, like a really annoying unit to deal into. So she has her own recharge. I think times pulse is very important here, or QP, or infantry pulse, something like that. It's very important to get that Regnal Astra to be instant accelerated. With null follow-up, she doesn't really care if units have Worry Fighter in their weapons or some sort of denial of follow-up. She has an incredibly good speed stat, so you combine Ayra's Blade with null follow-up, extra speed, get extremely good scale off Regnal Astra, and then because her special cannot be like denied, like the acceleration, you're guaranteed almost in most cases to get 2 Regnal Astras off, which is a lot of damage. Like if you take 50 damage and then you take Regnal Astra scaling, you're likely looking at like 15 or so, maybe a little bit more damage on every single Regnal Astra among her really high attack stat already. Take Vector, for example. Now, he relies on Special Fighter to get his effect off, his bonfires, for example. And if Ayra actually attacks into him, you actually do a fair amount of damage because of Regnal Astra. It's not true damage, but it's still a lot of damage. And he doesn't bonfire back, plus you have that damage reduction, and that is key. So he doesn't bonfire you back because he's relying on Special Fighter, and then you damage reduction his weapon triangle advantage to therefore actually hit him with 2 Regnal Astras and survive his attack back, because he can't auto double now because you'd be running a null follow-up. This is an extremely potent threat on defense if you can put it in the right place. Could be with like a rally or something. But yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say about Ayra. I'm going to genuinely respect and fear this on the right defense team. But of course, we need to talk about air offense as well, because yeah, that weapon's pretty good for air offense too. Now, I don't know about using Regnal Astra as a special. I think that's correct. I think that is the right option, because it's just going to secure a bunch of kills. It has a 1 charge on it. That charge cannot be denied. It can't be screwed over by ruse or guard or anything like that. And you get a lot of healing off of Mystic Boost. Keep in mind, these builds don't take into account any Mythic Blessings. So the scaling is obviously better once you incorporate Mythics into that equation. I think she's extremely good as an ARO carry and an AR defense threat now, both. And even at pretty low merges. The scaling gets even way better as you add merges to her. I'm honestly very impressed. For like a 5-star exclusive that came in like 2017, this is a premium unit and refined now. Huge way to upgrade her. If you have her, you can literally use her in a lot of good ways. So let's move on then. We're going to talk about Nowi next. Now, Nowi, again, just like Ayra, I feel her place is going to be AR defense, because she has something that is like unprecedented, which is being able to not like aerobatics or flyer formation in this case, but actually go even further out. But the reason that's cool is because then your allies can follow up on that. So if you are using something like guidance or flyer guidance, or they have orders like ground orders or air orders, Nowi's reach is really high, like really good. It's like equivalent to a ranged cav, but she doesn't need to be on the front line. And then on top of that, if the units behind her have some sort of orders or guidance support, they follow up in front of Nowi as long as she survives. So a little bit of bulk here on Nowi is key. I feel like Sturdy Impact is a solid A choice as well. I just again, sample builds, you know, mix and match what you think will work on your teams. It's hard to say, but essentially, very good setup unit and deceptively strong hidden range. I think a unit like this will easily catch off and snipe units that are completely unsuspecting of it. I love these sort of refines. I think they're very unique and really open up a dynamic to characters who otherwise are just boring. So if you wanted a different type of threat that could potentially snipe some, you know, units trying to hide, Nowi plus setup of that is huge. But of course, I don't think just defense is a place for her. You can literally use her on offense as well for the exact same reason. However, on offense, I feel like you're going to want something maybe like a far save, maybe a far save armor to kind of like make sure she doesn't get sniped, because she is fragile at the end of the day. But what I like about this is you have like infinite mobility, both you and your partners. So use like guidance, flyer guidance, escape route with fury chip damage, using an enemy lightning trap, and boom, she's like literally anywhere on the map, which is key for sniping pots, but also enabling a lot of enemy like basically cleaning up. Very good cleanup unit. And on top of that, her refine effect kind of supportive in nature a little bit. Like beyond mobility, you have a little bit of supportive nature in there that I really like. But mobility support plus that little debuff effect, really nice. I like this a lot. I don't have Nowi to experiment with this, but I think she definitely is up there in potentially good units, especially in high merge or high investment scenarios. Okay, so with that being said, next up is oh boy. Well, this is, yeah, it's a dud, folks. I'm sorry, La Rochelle fans. I can't really praise this one very much just because the competition is so good. On paper, this refine isn't terrible because it gives a lot of stats. It makes her bulkier. It gives her healing. So like, if the enemies can't deal with La Rochelle, she's very good. But the problem is her competition is so good that it's hard to really make a case for her being better than that competition. And of course, I'm talking about Reinhardt. I'm talking about Ursula and Selena, Fire Emblem 6 Selena with like the null follow-up wind sweep combination. I just feel completely outclassed as La Rochelle, despite her getting a lot of good stats. The condition on the weapon isn't too difficult to meet, and that healing is also kind of nice. So, you know, dump her on a cav line as like a substitute to Reinhardt or any of those I just mentioned, but honestly, I cannot say that this one is amazing. It could have been a lot better. That's unfortunate, very unfortunate missed opportunity. All right, next up is Ishtar. Okay, Ishtar is another very, very cool refine, in my opinion, because she has a very offensive stat spread, so very fragile unit, but because her refine effect basically says, okay, I can now double for sure, similar to that Selena FE6 effect, with no follow-up, like self no follow-up, means you can now give her wind sweep in the B slot and she can attack safely. On top of having a slaying effect on her weapon, it means she can auto charge her own specials, 2 charge specials like Moonbow, Glimmer, or Ruptured Sky. All very good options in their own ways. Of course, this can get even better if you use like Luna or Dragon Fang. Not going to be too good on like the Icebergs or the Ignis or anything like that, but definitely her auto charge ability there, plus being able to run like the self null follow-up effect, means that she's a great wind sweep candidate and will do a decent chunk of damage to the trifecta of very annoying Omni tanks now in AR offense, which of course are back to Christina and Brave Edelgard. All of those do not want to deal with this, like not at all. Of course, Christina will, you know, will run Null Sea Disrupt in most cases and kill her back, probably survive, but still take a fairly high amount of damage if she doesn't have that Vantage running. So I'm impressed by Ishtar. Similar to Ayra, I think their places are very strong on defense, which I guess you can say a lot about Jug Droll units in general. But yeah, good solid unit. Doesn't require a lot of merges to work. Great way. I like this refined batch a lot, folks. Except La Rochelle, all of them are interesting to talk about. Okay, so next up is Lyon. I think, so first of all, the text is a bait. It is QR. It's not dual phase, which obviously would have made him better, but I don't think that's a huge deal, and I'll explain why. So Lyon is very cool here, and I think he's fairly comparable to Fallen Lyon, his other version, in some ways. So hear me out here. Instead of having like straight up damage reduction like Fallen Lyon does, he just has a lot of damage reducing. So I guess that maybe that's the same kind of idea, but he just straight up makes his matchups good, and that's by the minus attack on his refine. Of course, he's got that Raven effect, and of course, just good defensive bulk. Plus, you know, that plus, like, okay, let me reiterate: minus attack, good bulk, easily mergeable, good color, combined with Mystic Boost, which Fallen Lyon will not be able to run consistently because he needs QR, which regular Lyon doesn't need. Okay, so I feel like Lyon is very comparably bulky to Fallen Lyon. Fallen Lyon needs QR to function. I feel like he wants Mirror Stance 3 and QR with Null Sea Disrupt, whereas regular Lyon can use his speed stat as shown here, especially once you factor in the Mythic effect. So he can work on both phases, and Mystic Boost keeps him in that QR range. So even though it's like, okay, I get the auto double on enemy phase, he still can function on player phase if you choose to give him that speed, and I think he can work it. A very close comparison here is obviously Sophia, Resplendent Sophia, but because Lyon was a later addition, he had more stats, so he's actually comparable to the Resplendent Sophia version. And I feel like his refine is better than Sophia. Sophia's is enemy phase bracing stance, whereas the attack minus res is dual phase, and of course he costs grails instead of a Resplendent version, which some people don't have access to. So I am a fan of Lyon, and I like I said, I like all these refines quite a bit. I think the only dud here is basically La Rochelle, and if you were a fan of any of these characters or were thinking about it, don't feel bad about investing into them. They all have good places, all can be run. Now keep in mind, Mirror Stance 3 can also be run on regular Lyon here, but I like the dual phase aspect of like a solo 4 here, plus the speed IV, which you can give them with a Tray Fruit. So yeah, guys, that pretty much covers everyone. Honestly, a very impressive batch. I'm looking forward to the next seasonal refines, which are happening. Maybe even Summer Xander gets one, who knows. But if they keep up this sort of like refined train, I'm all aboard, because they are all really interesting, all have a place, all make them stand out. It's not just like more red sword infantry. Like if you compare Ayra to like Joshua, for example, Joshua's is like really disappointing, but Ayra's is very interesting, and it's not just like flat stats. There's actually a lot of cool mechanics and ways you can use Ayra that makes her different from other comparable sword infantry, for example. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thank you guys as always for the support. I hope you guys are enjoying the daily content as I keep producing it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one, folks. Much love. Peace.